The 97-year-old Duke of Edinburgh flipped his car on a busy Norfolk road last week and reignited the debate on the age limit for older drivers. A debate which has spawned insulting presumptions that everyone over 75 is gaga and not fit to dress themselves, let alone drive a car. That's not only ageist, it's wrong. Older drivers are no more dangerous than most younger ones. In fact, 17 to 21-year-old men are up to 4 times more likely to have an accident than 70-year-olds. People talk glibly about taking licences away from the elderly like it's nothing, not understanding that for many, driving is their lifeline. It's about way more than just getting from A to B. It represents their freedom and independence and not having to ask for help or permission to do anything. Not being able to drive leaves many old people prisoners in their own homes, isolated and at risk of depression and loss of mobility. Yes, there should be rigorous testing, and yes, certain medical conditions should preclude driving. But we need to think long and hard before stealing the independence of millions just because of a number on their birth certificate.
Carole, I'm in the uncomfortable position of basically agreeing with you this week. First of all, I'm horrified by any suggestion that we should just strip people of their licences because of their age. That is a really destructive and ageist idea, and I think it would be, like you said, really damaging for people's independence. And also, I think it's important to point out that people under 20 have more fatal accidents than people over 75. However, there is concern about accidents among older people, especially among older people. Quite a lot of people over 75 or 80, for example, have stopped driving of their own volition because they are concerned about its safety. I know what it's like to not be able to drive because my mother has very bad eyesight and she had to stop driving when I was a child. And it was really debilitating for all of us, you know, and it really impacted her independence. So I think this is absolutely a subject we should take seriously and not take too lightly. But it is worrying when there are any concerns about road safety. And for under 21-year-olds who can be reckless drivers and people who are older who maybe do need to be retested, I think we do need to think about how could we create a regime that's not too intrusive, that's not unreasonable, but that also makes sure that people who can't drive safely for whatever reason, and it could be at an age, it could be like my mother because of an eye condition when they're younger, it could be because someone like me who doesn't drive very often and hasn't had a driving lesson in decades and actually is quite out of practice. So thankfully, I dodged the bullet of having to drive for the programme this week.
But you know, there was this report that came out of Swansea University that said a lot of the accidents that the elderly have is because people like us, younger people, we hassle them on the road. And I bet you would all admit to having done this at some day. You see someone older, they're driving much more slowly, much more carefully than we are. And we take unnecessary risks to get past them. And believe it or not,
talking about unnecessary risks, right, let's put this to bed straight away, okay? Old and young people and all that sort of things considered, we've done a bit of driving earlier, didn't we, Carole?
Yeah, we did. It wasn't a fair competition.
Not that there was anybody old out there.
Yes.
Honest.
Hi, my name is Mark Newman. I'm a retired police advanced driver and I currently run my own business as a driving professional. Good morning. You understand what we're going to be doing this morning?
Not really, no, not entirely, but, you know, tell me.
Well, a bit like your driving test. We're going to be driving down the road here, just a regular drive at the end, but we're going to do an emergency stop. I'll tell you when we're going to stop. We just want you to stop the car under control. We're going to do a 3-point turn, come back in this direction, and then a parallel park.
And what's a parallel park exactly?
That's just pulling up against the curb without gouging your alloy wheels or your tyres.
This is bizarre, yes. Yes.
And stop.
I think we both need the loo again now, don't we?
That's it.
This is so odd. Me driving a gear car.
Turn into the right here.
Right. And then we're going to do what?
We're going to
parallel
do
park, which I'm not entirely sure I'm that good at, but anyway. Ooh, see, I'm going off a bit now. Oh, I don't know what to do now. Oh, I might, that's it, isn't it? Can I stop there? Because I think I'm all right there now.
Put the handbrake on.
Right.
Turn the engine off. Stop. Perfect.
off there, Mr. Campion.
You get your loaf of bread in there?
And my loaf of bread in there. That's perfect.
There you go.
Well done.
Happy days. Thank you very much, sir.
So, Carole, how do you think that went?
I was watching him and I knew he was better, and that's the fact of the matter. He's driven tanks, for goodness sake.
I don't drive tanks. I walk to war.
And what's the hijack thing you've driven? What's that?
You just have to get out of
Well, yeah,
situations when they're
that's
tight
a Skoda.
sometimes.
You've driven a hijack
You two
thing.
carry on.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, bud. There we go.
Well done.
Proof for the pudding is
Yeah,
in all ways, all right? But what I will say on this myself, I do believe that at a certain stage, and if anybody feels they're getting to that stage, you should be tested medically as well. Because my next door neighbour, actually, she got to the age of about 80, and she had a heart attack behind the wheel and piled in. Now, she didn't, thankfully, hit anybody. She died herself, but she could have killed somebody innocent.
But all the research,
That's horrendous, isn't it?
let me just say, all the research says that older people regulate themselves. They don't drive at night, they don't drive in bad conditions. Maajid.
Well, I just think I take your point, and of course, you know, the statistics demonstrate younger male drivers especially, are more reckless, but for that, they are stopped more often by the police, and their insurance is higher. So there is a counterbalance to that. But I just worry that sometimes, perhaps, strangely, Carole, here, perhaps you're being a bit too politically correct.
No,
Because at the end of the day, just give them Sunday.
At the end of the day, you know, it's quite, I think, obvious that the older you get, the slower your faculties respond to things. So a 97-year-old behind the wheel, which is the recent example.
That's not the norm, obviously, with older people.
Prince Philip.
Yeah.
And you just think, OK, 97, there must be something in the system that slows down at that stage. Now, I'm not saying take their licences away. I am suggesting that perhaps there is a case for regular testing, that's all. They can keep their license.
Maybe you could have like you have the L plate, maybe you could have an O plate. Old person's plate.
but
To warn people
You have
that
a
they're
baby
coming.
on board, OAP on board.
Yeah, exactly. Old people driving.
Their faculties do slow down, that's a fact. But, you know, you won't find older people texting when they're driving. You won't find older people making phone calls. And like I said before, they self-regulate. And if you'd ever watched that programme, 100-year-old drivers, because I think there's more than 100 of them in the country currently, most of them pass the test with flying colours because they're much more careful.
I'll tell you,
than
can I
like
just,
us.
before Nick wants to come in, but I'll tell you how many there are, actually, because you mentioned the figures. If we have a look at this, there are 100,281 over 90s holding a valid driving licence in this country. That's according to the DVLA. Does that make you feel uncomfortable, Nick?
Well, I'll tell you what makes me feel uncomfortable, and I've got a confession to make. I've got to stop driving to Sky News to record this programme, getting up behind Greg Dyke, sounding the saying, get out of the way, you silly old sod. I've got to stop, just to keep that guy going. Right, the problem we've got is this is going to be a growing problem, because many of us are living longer, so the problem that we see now is going to, and it's fantastic, the medicine, drugs...
Can I interrupt you to just show you a statistic on that exact point? Because by 2040, 13.4% of the population is projected to be over the age of 75. So
retesting on timelines isn't a bad idea, is it?
A lot of people we're talking
So let's
about.
combine two strands. I think you're absolutely right. I wouldn't want to live in a country where you are just routinely, your licence is taken away from you because and I don't think any of us would do that. But Maajid, I hear what you're saying as well. And I don't like the way, as I understand it, and I've looked at the notes here, you effectively self-certify, don't you? You say,
yes.
I'm OK. I think we need to move to a different situation. I think we move to a position where, and I'm just going to pluck an age out of let's say 75, we can debate that, where, and it's not a full medical, and it's not a full driving test, or even the things you've just done with the Met bloke, but you have to have an eye test. I understand they gave Prince Philip an eye test the weekend after that accident, the police, and he's passed.
This already happens.
But I think it has to be done by, and you just need something signed off on the computer.
It has to be done.
Over the age of 70,
no,
over the age of 70, you now have to renew your licence every 3 years.
There's no physical test.
And you are,
there's no driving test. Yeah, it's just a form.
But don't you think a doctor needs to sign off on it?
Well,
or an optician? I don't care who it is.
Yes, no, I guess that is true. But I worry about the fact, we live in a society now which has no money for social care. You take the ability to drive from someone away who still can drive. No, hang on, and you isolate them, and they're on their own. I'm not suggesting kamikaze older drivers should be allowed to carry on.
But if they fail the eye test, sadly the decision has to be, doesn't it?
Well, of course. But you know what I don't like? I heard lots of people on LBC this week, actually, your radio station, saying, children of older parents saying, we reported our parents to the DVLA.
Oh.
Now, to me, that is just
I wish my sons had stopped doing that. I keep asking.
I'll tell you what, if you see Prince Philip driving without his seatbelt, I think we've got a photo of it, actually. But that was 2 days after the crash.
That's not good.
And, if I was his kid, I would say.
Well, you'd be
Where was
king.
that taken, though? Where was that taken?
Why-
Is that on a public road?
or maybe
Yeah.
I'd never be king.
Yeah, that was
That was
2
story.
days after the crash on the roads around San.
But, you know, it looks
So,
like he
yes,
didn't
it
learn
was.
his lesson. Now, obviously, the other thing is, as a 97-year-old, one wonders whether he just forgot. You know, and so I think Nick's point there about testing, you know, the intention shouldn't be to take their licenses away. But if they do fail, you know, eyesight tests or breathing tests, or if their heart rate's a bit erratic, then maybe a doctor should say to them, look, you know what?
All I'm saying
and if you're
is
Prince
that
Philip,
we-
you can afford a driver.
All I'm
surely.
saying is we have to think long and hard before we do it, because it can end the lives and the independence
you're right.
of an elderly
Yeah,
person.
But safety also should come first.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree.